Good afternoon. You're with us here on a fresh new edition of Mid-Cap Radar. It is as quiet as they come. 36 points lower on the Nifty, 10,826. I mean, even you're not getting a proper sell-off. So there is no momentum. There is no energy. Stocks are moving around, but they always do in any kind of a market. But you look at any of the indices, the mid-cap index, the small-cap index, the bank Nifty, the Nifty, it's all sort of going sideways without any clear direction. But again, I mean, as we've been saying, it is something to be expected, happens every year. And I suspect that the next couple of days are not going to be too much better. So that's where we are at as we start 1:30. We usually would take stock of what Europe is doing. Anisha is with me, Anisha, but there is no Europe to take stock of.
Oh, well, yes, there is no Europe. There are no Asian markets which are trading. I think we're the only ones who are working on the 1st of January. So let's take this time
it's like being there in a vacuum.
Oh, well, yes, we're working on our own cues, yes. But then it's a perfect time to wish our viewers a Happy New Year. Here's hoping that the New Year brings a lot more happiness and wealth and happiness for the viewers. But on that note, we have a business to tackle with. Here is a look at the top headlines. Thin news and low volumes keep the market lower on the first day of 2019. Nirmal Jain and Samir Arora say the first half of the year will be cautious, but they expect market to fare better in the second half.
Auto sales for the month of December have gotten off to a slow start. Maruti has reported a decline of 1.3% in sales with a 36% decline in exports, while expectations are that companies like Ashok Leyland will report a steep fall in sales this month. Remember, this is also the first month in which SIAM, the Automobile Association, is going to start reporting retail sales. The numbers that you see are all wholesale numbers, but for the first time, we will get the retail numbers as well. Anisha.
Oh, well, yes, SEBI mandates physical settlement for all stock derivatives starting April this year. Deena Mehta says this is the best New Year gift from SEBI, adds that the move will reduce expiry volatility with immediate effect.
It's a breather for aviation companies as ATF prices are cut by 14.7% in Delhi. This is the second consecutive double-digit cut in the last 2 months. Liquor stocks like Radico Khaitan and United Spirits are under pressure today after the Maharashtra government has hiked excise duty on Indian-made foreign liquor by 20%.
Won't rule out a universal basic income scheme, says the Minister of State for Agriculture, Mr. Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, adds that the government is studying several options. Bond yields jumped to 7.42% levels on prospects of a higher deficit. Well, Ashwini Gujral of AshwiniGujral.com joins us.
Just a quick bit, the Mahindra numbers, the sales numbers are at the bottom of the screen. So Ashwini is with us and we'll just bring him in, but look at the numbers because they're closely watched. And they're all, I guess, below, and I would say, sharply below expectations. I mean, total auto sales were seen at 44,000 plus units in December. They've come in at just under 40,000 units. So there is a miss which has come through at 10-12%. And I think tractor sales have come in, again, at 17,400 odd units compared to expectations of about 20,000 units. So in the case of both autos and tractors, both segments, there is, I mean, actually a decent size miss coming in the month of December. We'll get Sonia to talk about the numbers in some more detail in a bit from now. Maruti, remember, reported that disappointed, and now we got Mahindra, the other big one, which is disappointed as well. But Anisha, we have Ashwini with us.
Well, yes, Ashwini, your call on M&M and the others, the auto stocks, before we come to the trade setup?
See, autos is basically a cyclical sector. Every 3 or 4 years, they'll go through a slowdown, which will last a couple of years. And, you will get all these misses because that's how these numbers went up as well. So Maruti or Mahindra, they have more downside. And you need to wait for this slowdown to end. I think Mahindra is now sideways between 700 and 800. So I don't think auto should be a space where people should get into. Now on the market, although superficially it looks like nothing is happening and volume isn't there, as you can see right now we are falling. And this has been the call since morning because the momentum at key levels is slackening, and you need money to keep a market at higher levels. So once this 10,950 failed, I think this was coming. Now, lower levels could be closer to 10,700, 750. So my sense is that large stocks are now coming off. HUL, private banks. And what's up is, Realty and PSU banks that won't be able to hold up. So my sense is you will close nearer to the lows of the session, and possibly this downside could continue even tomorrow because institutional buying is anyway absent. So, if traders don't get momentum on the upside, they would much rather, take their profits off than keep sitting for 3 days waiting for institutions.
Okay, Ashwini, so trend is on the downside, but how do you trade this particular setup? What are the stocks that we can probably trade in?
See, Adani Enterprises is a sell with a stop of 160, target of 148. Tata Steel is a sell with a stop of 520, target of 495. BF Utilities you can buy with a stop of 217, target of 232.
Okay, Ashwini, thanks very much. We'll speak again in about an hour's time, and they'll be right on top of the last hour of trade at 2:30. One of the stories which we've been tracking, actually the progress of a scheme which was announced early in November, I should say last year now, was the 59-minute loan scheme for medium and small sized enterprises, MSMEs. We've got data now which shows how successful or not successful the scheme really has been. My colleague Ritu Singh has been taking stock of the scheme, sort of going on the ground, talking to people, and now she's with us here in the studios, and she's got a very special guest joining us to tell the banker side of the story, actually, at the big bank, State Bank of India. Ritu.
Well, Prashant, thank you for that. Yes, just yesterday, for the first time, we have got data for the 2 months since the launch of this portal. What was discerning, actually, what was not very good to note was the rejection rate was very, very high, is something that we've seen. But, let me quickly go across to our guest, Mr. P.K. Gupta, joining us now, Managing Director at State Bank of India. Mr. Gupta, a very happy new year to you first, and thank you very much for joining us here. We have several questions on this portal, but first, let me start by asking you, just from the data that we received, and this is a Lok Sabha reply, so it's government data, so to speak, the rejection rate is fairly high. We've seen, despite the portal seeking documents, taking GST returns, bank statements, everything required, the rejection rate by banks remains fairly high. Only 1/3 of the applicants that have applied on the portal have actually been given loans by banks. How do you read that data?
No, I think there is a misunderstanding in terms of how you are reading this data actually. See, what you are seeing is the rejection rate are not really the rejections actually. A lot of them are the proposals that are still being considered and are being evaluated by the banks. See, what happens is that, there are two types of proposals which are there in the system. One is there are people who are applying directly on the system and their applications are getting processed and are being sent to the banks for the purpose of sanction. The second type of proposal is that many banks have decided that they will be using this portal for the purpose of their renewals also. So for which, the banks need to educate the customers, help them to upload all the data that is required for the purpose of processing of loan applications and then take the renewals through the system. Now, as far as the people who are applying directly on the portals, I think their loan applications are getting sanctioned much faster. The data which I have for that is that out of about 35,000 applications that were made directly on the portal, close to 20,000 have already been sanctioned, which is almost about 60% of the applications. And rest of the applications, yes, there are a few of them would have been rejected for some reason, but a lot of them are still under process. Banks are working on it.
Okay.
Yes, there were some teething issues in the beginning, but most of them have now been sorted out. Like some of the rejections, when we have analyzed the reasons for rejection, there are quite a few people who simply applied on the portal to see how this portal works. There are very large number of applications.
Okay.
In some other cases, what happens is that there is somebody who is already working with another bank. Okay, and for the loan, the portal has sanctioned the limit with another bank actually.
Okay.
So for that bank to take over that limit from another bank, it takes some time actually. So that is where some time is still being taken.
Mr. Gupta, first on the number, you said 35,000 applications. Is that only to State Bank of India? As per the data we have, you alone were sanctioned about 33,000
No, I'll come to that.
Yeah.
No. I'll tell you, there are 1,14,000 applications, the data which you have, that is the total number, and that includes the renewals that are being processed on the portal also.
Okay.
So that includes the renewals. So in the renewals, yes.
Sir, of this 1,12,000
no, as I said, for the renewals, the thing is.
Please go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so there are quite a bit of them. The difference is the renewal application that the banks have pushed onto the portals. So where all these customers need to go to the portal, upload all their documents, and then their renewal journey will get completed on the portal. And that is where some time is being taken, because these customers need to be educated. They are being handheld by the banks. So we are educating all our customers how to go to the portal. See, in the portal, what exactly it does is that there are three things that the portal asks for. One is the GST number, and then the income tax returns have to be uploaded, and the bank statements have to be uploaded. The portal analyzes all three and actually sanctions the limits.
So if you could first up give us the number. So 1,12,000 in principle approvals granted. Of this, you said you found many of them were not genuine borrowers. They were only checking if the portal works, etc. What proportion of this would you assign to those kind of borrowers?
There would be some. As I said, 35,000 were the state sanctions that have been done. Out of 1,12,000, the rest of it were renewals that are still in the process, of getting sanctioned actually. Okay, so that sanction will take a little bit of more time. Most of these proposals will get cleared in the next few days.
Okay, so for State Bank
from
of
the
India,
bank's point of view, instead of the banks taking a lot of time.
Just 1 minute. Mr. Gupta, so there are a couple of numbers floating, lots of numbers here. So let's just go one by one. First, you said there were 35,000 applications made directly on the portal, out of which 20,000 were sanctioned.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, close to 20,000. Yeah.
Okay, and out of 1,14,000 total applications, which includes renewals, 35,000 in total have been sanctioned.
Yeah.
And the rest, you're saying, are in process.
Yeah, they have been rest of them are in the process of completing the sanction process actually.
So,
do you know how many of those remaining applications have been outrightly rejected? Can you give us that number? Not under process, but rejected for whatever reason.
No, I think the rejection. See, the rejection number is not very high. What is being done is that the other applications are still in the process of sanction. See, I'll tell you one example. See, in case somebody has applied on the portal, he is already having a limit with Bank A actually. Okay, and when his data is analyzed on the portal, and it finds that he is able to get a limit from Bank B, and the application goes to Bank B for sanction.
Could you just give us a number,
Bank B to sanction, either the Bank A limit needs to get transferred actually.
Sir, could you just give us a number?
The number I have is, see, for example, for State Bank of India alone, if I talk, for State Bank of India, I see that the direct sanctions that have happened on the portal are about 5,500, and we have already actually sanctioned 2,600 applications out of that. So there are other applications which are relating to renewals which are getting sanctioned, and they will get sanctioned in the next, I would say that within the next 2 weeks, most of those sanctions will happen also.
Again, so this 1,12,000, 1.12
so the portal actually is helping the...
Sorry, yeah, please go on.
No, see, I tell you, I think you must also look at it what the portal does. I think it's very helpful for the banks in the sense that most of the appraisal which the banks were doing manually.
We'll get to that, sir. So just first, if you could clarify for us, of this 1,12,000 loans that have been given in principal approvals, to say that there is a 36% approval rate because only 40,000 odd have been sanctioned would be incorrect, because you're saying some of them are still under process and more of these could be sanctioned over the next few days. Or months or whatever the time.
Yes.
Okay, second question,
sir, that is exactly the point. Out of 1,12,000, 40,000 have already been sanctioned. Rest
are in process. Okay, so what is the actual
rest of them are still being processed actually, and they will get sanctioned in the next few weeks.
Okay.
See, the dispersal, I tell you, after the sanction happens, the dispersal happens when the customers actually come up with their documents, actually. So they need to bring the invoices against which the dispersal has to happen, actually, or when they show their pickup in the activity. So that is based on the documentation which the customers are able to produce, actually. So most of them, the dispersals have happened. I won't be able to tell you the exact number against each one of them. But where the sanctions have been delivered, the documentation has been done, the dispersals have already started, actually.
So one of the key complaints of many people, you would have read their comments on the website, on the Twitter page as well, are saying that banks are asking for collateral after the in-principle approval has been given on the portal. And the portal in the FAQs very clearly states, of course, it is up to the lender's discretion, but no collateral is required per se. And the second thing is that you're asking for IT returns for the last 2-3 years, whereas some of these are first-time entrepreneurs, first-time borrowers, and they do not have the IT returns to show for the last few years. So are you saying you cannot lend to such, this profile of borrowers?
No, that's not right. See, first of all, I think this portal, the way it has been launched as of now, it is meant for the existing MSME customers, the people who have been running their business. Primarily, this is aimed at the people who are running their business out of their own funds, have not had access to the formal funding from the banking sector. So what this portal does is when the people upload all their data, we are able to tell them how much money they can borrow from the banking sector, and they're able to go to the bank and take the money. So in the process, a lot of these people who have been funded by the banks are the guys who have been running their business without funding from the banks, and they are able to avail that funding. Secondly, what it also does is, in many cases, people have got small limits, so they are able to get higher limits from this system, and they are able to get the enhancements in their limits also. So this is actually meant at the existing people who have been running business. This is not right now meant for the new to the business customers.
Okay, sir. So we're running out of time. I quickly wanted to clarify a couple of things.
Other issue regarding the collateral.
Yes, sir. So we're running out of time.
Let me clarify that collateral issue. See, basically what happens is, as per the scheme, up to 10 lakh loans are given without collateral. Beyond 10 lakhs, the bank can ask for collateral. So typically what happens is most of the loans that are being sanctioned by the banks under this is covered by the CGTMSE guarantee, for which a small fee has to be paid actually. So wherever the borrowers are agreeing to pay that fee, so that is being sanctioned to them. In fact, the rate of interest that is being charged by the banks on this portal is much lower than the normal bank schemes actually. So I think if you look at the overall cost of funding that the borrowers have to pay when they are applying under this portal and taking money from the bank is much lower than what they would get otherwise when they approach the banks directly. It gives them a lot of comfort in terms of being able to get the finance from the banks. There were some teething issues. I believe most of them have been sorted out, and you will be seeing much higher numbers going forward in the next few weeks.
Mr. Gupta, just one last question, basic question. Can banks reject a loan even if the system okays? System says, okay, I mean, the sanction can be done. Do the banks actually personally have to go to the place, value the inventory and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. After the system generates a sanction, our people do go and visit the place of work. We do complete due diligence. Only after the due diligence is done, the loan is actually disbursed. And if we find any problems, so those issues are addressed by the banks actually.
All right, Mr. Gupta, thanks very much for joining us, and thank you patiently for answering all the questions. And I hope that you'd come back once we have more data as time passes by on how many of those remaining applications have gone through successfully, etc. So we hope to have you back. Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta, for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Ritu, thanks very much for taking us.
Thank you. Well, in the last few minutes, we have seen a bit of knockoff when it comes to the markets. A lot of these auto stocks are also coming under a bit of pressure. We saw the numbers as far as monthly sales go for M&M. They looked a tad bit disappointing, and you can see the disappointment in the stock as well. That stock has lost around 2.25% in the last few minutes. Escorts reported numbers, and they actually looked good. In fact, the stock was reacting positively to that. You can see that spike coming on the stock as well. That one has reported quite a bit of gain when it comes to the exports. They have nearly doubled on a year-on-year basis, and even the domestic number for Escorts as far as the tractors goes has jumped up by around 21%, and that is what is really moving. Other than that, the Bank Nifty is sitting with a cut of around 100 points. Names like IndusInd Bank have come under a bit of pressure. ICICI Bank as well in the last few minutes has seen a tad bit of knock, and if you want to pull up Bajaj Auto as well, that one is too in tandem with the other auto stocks is perhaps coming under a bit of pressure. When you look look at the broader markets, well, stocks like Adani Enterprise is actually down about 3%. We have a lot of variety of the sectors that are coming under a bit of pressure. We have been talking about how IMFL excise duty in Maharashtra has gone up by 20%, and that's the reason United Spirits is sitting with cuts. But it's the first day of 2019, and the market experts believe that markets will be volatile until the elections. Here out what Sameer Arora of Helios Capital and Nirmal Jain of IIFL Group have to say on the outlook for 2019.
In 2019, I think it can't be a runaway year, I think, initially. But it's going to be a positively trending year, and then we see what happens in May. But it won't be a year where you are, you have to be bearish from day one. We are going in bullish, but we know that you can't have a runaway rally, I think, till these things get sorted out in terms of election outcomes and all. And after that, you could actually have a very good year if the rest of the world doesn't fall apart. The only thing is that still there is an event, and that event is associated with very high volatility in the past, and even now could be. And second is anything that the government may do which may be viewed by the market as being, overly friendly to, which it should be sometimes, to rural or to farmers, or something which looks a bit, affecting fiscal deficit, things like that. Some, green field here or there, or brown field with, some consumer type guys expanding capacity here or there. That can always happen. But I don't think big picture, big capex can happen right now.
The first half, because, these are on the election year, and the elections will be over in first half, and the new government will be, in power. So I think, you'll see a range-bound market with not much happening. I'm very optimistic about the outcome of the elections, and then I think the second half, therefore, will be very good because as people see clarity, then from a macro fundamentals, India is a great country. It's the fastest growing economy. Oil, as it is around $50 or even $50 to $60, augurs very well for our macro. And given all those things, I think second half will be very good, and first half will be range bound. Broadly, first half investors will be cautious, and they should be cautious for good reasons. And second half is something when we'll have a clear trends emerging.
47 points on the Nifty, so could be that finally, for the first time in the day, the market is finally picking a trend. But that is catching on to a trend, I should say, and that's on the downside. Let's see if it goes all the way, or things start to settle down once again in the last hour and a half of trade. The big loser on the Nifty is Mahindra & Mahindra. It's down 3.5%, and that's on the back of the sales numbers which just came through. The stock was flat actually when the numbers hit the screen, and that's the collapse we've seen on Mahindra & Mahindra since then. I mean, it's followed by IndusInd Bank, which is down about 2%, and Hindalco, which is down about 2% as well. So that's broadly what's going on. The top gainer on the Nifty is Yes Bank. It got to about 187 or so today. It's off the highs, but still got about 1% on it. We'll keep watching the markets for you. Thanks very much for staying with us here on this edition of Midcap Radar. Your stocks will take all the action forward.